Delegation of Islamic leaders returned for another round of dialogue with Niger military junta at President Tinubu's instance.
No more propaganda in dissemination of government policies and programs, new information minister reaffirms.
The focus of government now is how to restore the confidence of the governed.
And 6 more countries join BRICS as 15th summit ends in Johannesburg, South Africa.
The BRICS expansion process, which has been in discussion for quite a while. We have consensus on the first phase of this expansion process.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the Nigeria Labour Force Report.
All right, let's remind you that in November last year, that's 2022, the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, unveiled to the public a revision of the Nigeria Labour Force Survey methodology, following limitations noticed with the old methodology in computing the country's labour force.
That's right, Claire. Now, the revised methodology brought about significant changes to how labour market data is collected and analysed. Now, it defines employed people as individuals who are working for pay or profit and who worked for at least 1 hour in the last 7 days. And the the methodology also considers those working less than 40 hours per week, declaring themselves willing and available to work more as underemployed.
Well, the survey also captured subsistence agriculture and temporary absentees from work. Now, those improvements, among others captured in the revised computations, will also, according to the NBS, make Nigeria labour force data comparable with other countries of the world.
Now, the latest labour force survey report covers the 4th quarter of last year, 2022, and the 1st quarter of this year, 2023, and it was officially released on Thursday in Abuja. Now, the survey was conducted by the NBS, as the Bureau of Statistics, in collaboration with the World Bank and the International Labour Organization, ILO, in response to labour market dynamics.
So this year's report presents an in-depth analysis of key labour market indicators, including the unemployment, underemployment, informal employment, and hours worked. Now, the National Bureau of Statistics disclosed that it embarked on the revision of the methodology through adoption of the 19th International Conference of Labour Statisticians and Labour Underutilization, and the latest International Labour Organization Model Questionnaire, which includes unemployment among persons engaged in their own consumption work.
Now, the revised approach, the report indicates, aligns with Nigeria's neighbors in Africa, and these include Ghana, Chad, Cameroon, Benin Republic, the Gambia, among others, and it's also in line with international best practices.
Now, the key highlights of the report is that Nigeria's unemployment rate for the 1st quarter of 2023, that's this year, was 4.1%, while that of the 4th quarter of 2022 stood at 5.2%. Now, the big question is, what other key findings did the report highlight? And of course, what are the indicators and parameters for arriving at the various data? These are some of the questions we will be asking. But most importantly, what does Nigeria Labour Force Data Survey represent, and how does it add value to your lives? So join us as we focus on Nigeria Labour Force Report today on Good Morning Nigeria. I am Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak, and I welcome you to the program.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague and also welcome you to the program. It's the last episode for the week. And as always, we are live from our headquarters studios in the nation's capital of Abuja. In the course of the program, we'll take the highlights of the morning news presently. Then, of course, we'll have business as well as newspaper review. But right now, here is Zendrek Digmon, who has the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Zendrek.
Good morning. Of government in Nigerian Republic as President Bola Tinubu had approved the return of a delegation of Islamic leaders to Nigerian Republic for another round of dialogue with the military junta, General Abdurrahman Tichani.
Mr. President, as the head of ECOWAS, is interested in pursuing peaceful resolution of this crisis. But like I said, nothing is off the table. Mr. President has said he should continue to engage, and the ulamas will continue to do that.
President Bola Tinubu has directed that all issues affecting relations with the Emirates Airline and issuance of visas to Nigerians should be immediately resolved, as he emphasized that he is prepared to personally intervene. The directive came as the President received letters of credence from new ambassadors, including that of the United Arab Emirates.
United Arab Emirates as well. So very keen to resolve all outstanding issues, with Nigeria. The work had started even before the presentation of the letters of credence by the ambassador.
The Nigerian and the British armies have expressed determination to strengthen ties on personnel training and equipment acquisition. This was the focus of deliberation between the visiting United Kingdom Minister of State for Armed Forces and Veteran James Stephen Keithley and Chief of Army Staff Lieutenant General Taoreed Lagbaja. The military ties Lieutenant General Lagbaja noted will provide opportunity for the Nigerian Army to tap the British Army's rich experience and expertise in counter-terrorism, peace support, logistics, and intelligence.
The partnership, especially the training, and even expanding on it.
With a new government in Nigeria and new chiefs appointed to establish new friendships.
The House of Representatives has described the observance of sit-at-home order in some parts of the southeast as unproductive and constituting a setback to the economic growth and development of the region. At an investigative hearing with law enforcement agencies, the House Ad Hoc Committee on Insecurity advocated multifaceted approach to reducing criminality in the region.
To set up a joint patrol team to comb the farmlands and forests to root out kidnappers, bandits, and all criminal elements in all parts of Isukwato and Umunochi local government areas of Abia State.
Nothing has been done. They have not moved any inch inside the bush because the kidnapping keep increasing.
Nigeria's economic reforms and diplomatic alliances are intended to attract investments and partnerships while aligning with international and regional cooperation. Vice President Kashim Shettima stated this while addressing world leaders at the 3rd BRICS Africa Outreach and BRICS Plus Dialogue on the sidelines of the ongoing 5th BRICS Summit at the Sandton Convention Center in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Based on 1, harnessing the agricultural potential of our nations, 2, harnessing renewable energy to revolutionize Africa.
The strategic role of brand building by the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations will be harnessed by the current administration to inculcate integrity to the citizens. Minister of Information and National Orientation Mohammed Idris Malagi at the annual general meeting of NIPR reaffirmed that the era of using propaganda in disseminating government policies and programs is gone.
You are aware that the focus of government now is how to restore the confidence of the governed in government and its institutions. You are aware of the vantage and strategic intervention that the communication spectrum can assist tremendously in making the profession more relevant and more focused.
And the Minister of Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, has expressed readiness to complete some of the ongoing critical projects that have direct impact on the lives of the residents. The Minister expressed this during an inspection tour of some abandoned and ongoing projects within the city centre.
Where the five presidents are supposed to reside and a contract awarded in 2010 and we're 2023, nothing is going on. Funding is a problem. So why in the first place did we go into it? Well, we know that we don't have the funds for the project. This is embarrassing.
That's the news for now. The program continues with Claire and Kingsley after this break. Please stay with us.
This is Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA, and time to take a look at business story. And we understand that high intellectual capability is responsible for the rise to up to 73% of Nigerians accessing UK-sponsored study visa in just 1 year. Alika Okpanacharwa will tell us all about it.
New official immigration data revealed that more Nigerians were granted sponsored study or student visas by the United Kingdom, as the number has almost doubled in 2023 compared to the number recorded in 2022. The data from the British government on Thursday shows that out of the top 5 nationalities granted sponsored study visas, Nigerian nationals saw the most significant percentage increase, up 73% from 33,958 in the year ending June 2022 to 58,680 in the year ending June 2023. This means that 24,722 Nigerians were granted sponsored study visas within the period under review.
Quite a number of the students may also be desiring one program, one course or another. And the university system in Nigeria appears to have fewer and fewer, slots. These are among the few factors that necessitate quite a number of parents, to look elsewhere, particularly in other climes that they can send their children.
Let's take a look at Thursday tradings on the floor of the exchange. With business news, Alika Okpanacharwa.
Thank you very much, Alika, for the business news package. Up next, newspaper review.
And Chukwudi Abuja is right here with us in the studio today to review the newspapers for us. Chukwudi, good morning.
Good morning, Claire. How are you doing?
Very well.
Good morning, Kingsley.
Yeah, Chukwudi, good to see you.
Same here.
All right. We have the leadership on Friday. We also have the Punch, and then the good old Daily Times is reappearing, at least for today. We have the front page of the Daily Times. But let's begin by taking a look at the window page of the Leadership Friday. Leadership Friday, below the nameplate, which is the lead story, and it has an elaborate infographics. It has elaborate infographics. 5.3 million prepaid meters risk crashing over software expiration. Local manufacturers move to avert crisis. That's the rider to that headline. Now, it says about 43% as of March 31st this year were registered consumers, with most of them, of course, having the power. And 92% of the meter asset provider scheme had installations of over 171,000. You can look at the numbers right there, but what is significant is that the headline is saying 5.3 million prepaid meters risk crashing over software expiration. And risk of darkness, it says, customers with standard transfer specification, prepaid meters who fail to upgrade will risk staying in darkness from 1st November 2023. Nigeria crisis, ECOWAS sends Islamic clerics on second mission. APC NWC members, Kogi governor and supporters and others protest. Wike orders arrest of Abuja collapsed building owners. Another appeal court affirms Akpakpa as Labour Party national chair. Tribunal witnesses alleged vote reduction against Governor Sule. Tinubu orders quick resolution of issues with UAE on Emirates Airlines and visa. And also very quickly from the Daily Times, as I mentioned earlier, we have Daily Times, the window page above the nameplate says, Niger coup, that's the kicker, I'm the one delaying military action. Tinubu tells ulamas. And the lead story says, release Kanu unconditionally for peace in Southeast, and that's attributed to a Reps committee chair. Reps summoned Federal Accountant General as bank boss indicts IPPIS. Earlier we read the story of Wike, that's the FCT minister, ordering the arrest of the owner or owners of the collapsed structure in Garki yesterday. Job racketeering. Committee demands analysis of staff representation. Claire.
Yeah, okay, let's take a look at the Punch newspaper now. And it leads with Naira crumbles to 920 Naira to the dollar, and fuel marketers push for fresh price hike. The riders' fuel price can't remain at 617 Naira, with Naira falling below 900 to the dollar. Ipman. Nigerians back subsidy removal. FG replies of Basaki, and Labour wants NNPCL probe. And the sad pictures, stories there, fallen slabs, trapped us while fleeing Abuja collapse building victims. You see a cross-section of the pictures of the incident yesterday. FG faces heavy criticism over 4.1% unemployment data. It's on page 19. And 12 die in Nasarawa boat accident. Assembly mourns, page 5. Account for missing Boko Haram victims. Families urge federal government. And just above the nameplate, ECOWAS military action won't yield positive results in Niger, Russian envoy. And federal government makes 2 trillion Naira taxes from Google, Facebook, foreign firms, according to a report. And Culture Minister still a copper group alleges. Details of that on page 28.
Thank you, Claire. Niger coup, I am the one delaying military action. Wise words at the right time. You know, when the furor over military intervention started, there were almost direct attacks on the Nigerian leader, you know, as being the one who's clamoring for us to march on Niamey. And there we keep on stressing that these people are kith and kin. So I like the fact that the president is coming out to say, I am the one delaying military action. It shows that the big brother status is still there and that we really are circumspect about the implications that a shooting war could bring about right there at our borders. You just said now that the Russian envoy is saying that the ECOWAS military action will not yield positive results. I like Russia coming clearly down in diplomatic tones because their presence in all of the imbroglio has been rather shady, if I may be permitted to use that word. Just yesterday, we heard that Yevgeny Prigozhin, that's the leader of the Wagner group, supposedly died in an air crash in Russia. Nobody knows the circumstance of that crash. The United States sources are saying they didn't see a projectile, rising to take down this aircraft. And nobody knows,
Yes, this morning on the BBC.
Yes.
There were also reports on that. And then there were some insinuations of a likely bomb.
The British are saying it's likely that
was brought down.
The plane was taken down. Remember the face-off after the aborted mutiny. They were 200 miles away from Moscow before this man, who is supposedly late now, decided to tell the boys, turn around, we are not marching on Moscow anymore. And the Russian leader did indeed call it a stab in the back. He was quite clear about it. We were surprised when later they said some truce had happened between the Russian authorities and the Wagner group. They would now go to Belarus. The man would not be prosecuted. Then some people said, we are not too sure about it. The Russian leader might have an axe to grind over time with the man. Yes, we're not going to insinuate anything. We don't know what happened.
He returned to Russia.
He's been going to Russia back and forth.
Yes. And just to paraphrase President Biden's remarks on that incident, which was reported, that there is nothing that happens in Russia without the knowledge of Putin. So that speaks a lot.
No, he's an absolute leader, come to think of it. So to that extent, without taking sides, Biden was quite right. He's in control. Well, they say things are a bit shaky now. In a war situation, sometimes your hold is not very, very solid.
This morning, just before you leave that, this morning, one of my colleagues wondered aloud to say what would now happen to the Wagner group. Does it mean that it has been weakened, or is it dead?
Now, Ukrainians are inwardly happy that Yevgeny Prigozhin has gone down. Remember the Bakhmut incident, where there was a grinding. They actually called Bakhmut at a point the meat grinder, meaning that souls perished there, both on the Ukrainian side and the Russian side. So Ukrainians are inwardly happy because Yevgeny Prigozhin, whatever you think about him, was really a charismatic leader of Wagner. And his number 2 man actually supposedly went down in that crash yesterday. So some level of decapitation may have happened to the group, but then well-trained military outfits easily pop up a leader again when there's a demise of the people who have been leading them. So we never know. The important thing is that peace returns to the world, whether it's in Ukraine or in West Africa. That's the point.
Well, I think that we should also bear in mind that the incident occurred actually on Wednesday, and yesterday was Thursday.
Oh, sorry about that.
The incident occurred on Wednesday.
Because I missed it
and Prigozhin that that's spoken about in somewhat glowing terms was leading a mercenary group. And under international law, mercenaries are outlawed. Mercenaries are outlawed.
No, I didn't speak about it in glowing terms. Well, we're talking about his leadership capabilities. Those are two different things.
He said he was a charismatic leader.
He was charismatic.
Yeah, charismatic.
To his group.
Which group? And I'm saying that's the outlawry about the use of mercenaries anywhere in the world.
I'm not disputing that.
That's not the reason. That's not the reason why he was treated the way he was treated eventually. But he of course, knew that probably there was danger ahead after the attempted mutiny in Moscow. And all those who were applauding him at that time now are saying that, oh, this is the way Russia responds. And I think it's an obvious exaggeration to declare that nothing happens in Russia without the knowledge of Putin. There are only 24 hours in a day, and Russia has the world's largest time zones. So how could you possibly know of any and everything? Yes, you have a number of departments, you have the Secret Service. When the CIA was all over the place in Africa and Latin America, carrying out its operations, the US president, who was in charge at any material time, probably just nobody could attribute or did attribute those things to the U.S. president. And the comments of President Biden, what Claire was also referring to as what the British are saying, these are not disinterested comments. They are not, because they know, because they are at war virtually with Russia at the moment because of the support they are providing to Ukraine. So whatever will make Putin and Russia look bad, of course, they will say that. It is the business of Russia to investigate this incident. I want to call it an incident, whether it was an accident or it was deliberate. And unfortunately, I mean, it seemed to have occurred also in real time, because there was a video that circulated showing the aircraft coming down and eventually crashing and then exploding into a ball of fire. Now, obviously, if there was a SAM, that's a surface-to-air missile, you would have seen the shrapnels from the aircraft. So whether it was an incident or otherwise, all of these things, will be sorted out. And let us also remember, this is part of what has gone on around the world. When certain organizations or institutions take decisions about certain persons, they do carry it out. They do carry it out. And I'm talking about MNCs. Those are multinational corporations. If you are stopping their profits, it has happened elsewhere around the world. I don't want to mention names. It's happened. And there was a threat of it also in our backyard almost a few decades ago. Somebody who had been a thorn in the side of an MNC was threatened with such an action. So it's not to justify it. And the same Prigozhin was said to have returned only recently from Niger, from a visit to Niger Republic or West Africa, ahead of the response to the threat by ECOWAS to restore the regime of President Bazoum. So that's that on the side. But I think, Claire, what I want to talk about very quickly is the issue of these prepaid meters crashing. For a number of years now, and on Good Morning Nigeria, we have talked about metering. People not getting meters, getting estimated billing, and the agony that goes with that. You have not fully provided the meters. There was a program for a supply of meters. That program has not been fully realized. So even those who have now, there's a threat that their meters will crash. But why is it that almost everything with us just turns into an emergency? So I don't know. I understand all you need to do is 2 steps, buy a code, impute it, and so on and so forth. The next thing you will hear about your bank account. Today is 12 digits, another day is 10 digits, another day go and do all kinds of things. Why is it that the customer is constantly on the back foot in our economy? Oh, sorry.
Yes, Chukwudi, I would just allow you to make a brief
response. Oh, it's very important.
Yes,
I say
yes,
that.
please do, because we've asked to.
Okay. First of all, it should not be the customer's business for you to upgrade this. Look, we went into this tirade over the supply of meters. Now the meters seem to be available. You're telling us another fairy tale. You can actually upgrade from your own end. These are technologically possible now. So it is not fair, really. I side in quite solidly with Kingsley on that score.
Right,
yes. Claire, I know that when we are signing off our program today, you will say, you will repeat the usual slogan of the Nigerian Television Authority for our viewers who are not already to be a star. Namely, joined in the campaign against rape and rapists. Now, this is not a case of rape. I just want to throw this in. You guys may have discussed it when I wasn't around. The Dean of Law at the University of Calabar is currently on suspension on allegation of sexual harassment by students of that faculty. It's on suspension at the moment. A committee has been set up. But one issue that I have not found answer to, because I raised this some years ago when the issue happened at Obafemi Awolowo University. Why is it that when female students are under threat of sexual harassment by male lecturers, they don't have recourse to female lecturers, either in the same faculty or in the university. So let us lay our complaints at your doorstep so that you take it up. Is there a conspiracy of silence by female lecturers?
That's a big question. Thank you, Kingsley. I think that's a topic that we probably would have to discuss or take up on this program. And just before we round off, to say that Tosa Musa did all her best yesterday in the finals of the 100 meters hurdles, but of course she came sixth. With a time of, greater than what she clocked during the time she won. But still, despite that, her record still remained 12.616 seconds, still remain 1.2 seconds, still remain the world's record. So we want to use the opportunity to congratulate her despite her loss. So let's take a short break now. Our conversation will begin presently.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, as a prompt for our conversation, which is on the Nigeria Labour Force Report, we'll listen to this backgrounder as compiled by our correspondent, Moplang Dakok.
The new indicator, which now shows that Nigeria's unemployment for the first quarter of 2023 was 4.1%, is against the previous high rate of 33.3% in 2021, arrived at by the old methodology. Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, who launched the report, is particularly impressed with a part of the report which indicates that 76% of the population are employed and are engaged in one form of work or other for at least 1 hour a week, which shows that Nigerians are not idle.
Close to 75% of Nigerians are engaged in one activity or the other. So these are people, we are people across the country who have demonstrated effort. What sometimes we need more.
Stakeholders are unanimous that the report should be an important component in preparing the budget.
This data is giving us proportion of people that are self-employed in Nigeria, not just looking at wage employment.
This kind of data periodically helps government, helps all of us figure out what's going well, what's working well, where the problems are, what kind of interventions are needed, what kinds of policies and programs are needed.
The data, which is expected to place Nigeria on a path to reducing poverty, is coming at a time when government is making efforts to strengthen the MSME subsector and reduce poverty.
Moplang Dakok, thank you very much for the background to our conversation. Let me welcome to the studios here our guest. First, Prince Adeyemi Adeniro is the Statistician General of the Federation, Chief Executive Officer of the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS. We're glad to have you with us, sir.
Good morning. Thank you.
Also here in the studio in Abuja is Oates Pape. He's the lead economist, World Bank here in Nigeria. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
All right, two other guests with us this morning here in the studios, the regular and Good Morning Nigeria, Niyi Akinsiju is a financial and investment analyst. Niyi, we're glad to have you.
It's a privilege. Thank you so much. Good morning, Nigerians.
And joining us via Zoom from Lagos is Mr. Wale Smart Oyerinde. He is Director General of NECA, that's the Nigeria Employers Consultative Association. Wale Smart, good to have you this morning. All right, we hope we sort out the audio with Wale Smart. We didn't quite hear him respond, but of course you saw his lips sinking there. Okay, now back to the studios. Let's begin with the Statistician General of the Bureau of Statistics. There is a Nigeria Labour Force report which has been launched. What is this all about?
Thank you. Good morning, Nigerians. Thank you for having me. The newly released Nigerian Labour Force Survey report that was released yesterday is all about how do we get a comprehensive data on labour market matters or statistics in Nigeria. Comprehensive one. that we cover all areas that are needed, all information needed by government, by citizens, by government at both federal and state level to be able to address the issue of unemployment, the issue of underemployment, the issue of labor underutilization generally in the country. So we have a renewed methodology in line with international best practices, in line with the latest standard and guidelines set by ILO that all other countries are using. So we have also modernized our data production process to ensure that the quality of the data that we have this time around is high, is good, the data are accurate, so that we give exact situation of labor issue to government. We have also modernized or strategized our data collection approach. Before, we used to do it one-off on quarterly basis, which has led to us having some quarters data. In some quarters, we won't have funds to do it and all that. But now we are having a continuous data collection for a period of 12 months, non-stop. That is the strategy now, so that we'll be able to give results at national level on quarterly basis. And at the end of that 12-month period, we'll be able to have a more disaggregated data that can give us detail about each state, detail about all sectors, and other granular disaggregation from the data. So that is what is new there. As you all know, another innovation or guideline that we follow in that new labor force that we are talking about is that the concept and definition that we are using before also change. Not that we decided to say, oh, let's change this thing. We decided that, look, Nigeria, we are using a different concept from all other countries, both our neighbors in West Africa as well as outside Africa, USA, UK. Before, we said that if somebody works between 1 to 19 hours in a week, which is very, very common, that person is unemployed. If you work 19 hours in a week, you are unemployed. If you work 20 to 39 hours, you are underemployed. And if you work 40 hours, that's the only time that you are employed. And the ICLS, International Conference of Labor Statistics, has changed that methodology long ago. Not less than 26 African countries have adopted that new methodology. But in Nigeria, we have not changed it. We are still using the old methodology that's ICLS 13, because we are adopting ICLS 19th now. So during COVID-19, that was when our eyes started to open to this. When we had lockdown, and we conducted a labor force survey using our phone technology. And people were locked down. If you have to report unemployment as at that time, it will be like 97%. Everybody knows. But there are people that are employed because they are not unemployed. They are locked down in their houses. So because we don't have questionnaire that accommodates such situation, if you are on leave, you are not at work, as at that time, the previous one, we classify you that you are unemployed. But with this new methodology that we have adopted, if you are on leave, if you are sick, we'll be able to capture you that you are working, but you are absent at work. Rather than to give impression to government that these people are not working. But they are actually working, but they are on leave. Before, farmers, during off-season, when there is no activity, we just report them that they are unemployed. And you know the number of people that are into farming in Nigeria. But we also factor in now that this is a farmer is waiting for rain to start his planting. So we can't just say all farmers are unemployed because they are not on farm at that particular time. We have also been able to address that issue in this new methodology.
Okay, I'll still like you to explain further because to many Nigerians, this may sound, new or strange. And you earlier you talked about quality of the data. I'd like you to speak to that, within the context of our conversation, what you mean. And then I also like you to tell us if many other countries, this is the standard, is the standard according to the ILO and the World Bank, and many other countries, especially our neighbors, have been doing that. Why have we suddenly just realized that that's the way to go?
That's just what I just said now.
Yes.
During COVID-19, when we see that the methodology that we are using is not flexible, it's not allowing other scenarios to be captured. Before, if you are a university lecturer, a professor in the university that is 70 years old, because we peg the working age population at 15 to 64. So anybody outside the age of 64, we are not even going to ask you whether you are employed or not. So the lecturer that is a 70-year-old or 65-year-old at university, we are saying that they are not part of people that are contributing.
Was it just a matter of COVID-19?
I'm saying now that lecturers before, this is not COVID-19 now, justice, anybody above the age of 64, we are not capturing them. So these are observations apart from the issue of COVID-19. This one has nothing to do with COVID-19. Before, I'm mentioning three things now. That if you are working before for 1 to 19 hours in a week, we are saying that you are not employed. You are unemployed. Even if you work for, we know lawyers, you go to court maybe once in a week and you spend maybe 2-3 hours in the court and you know how much you earn for that particular appearance. And we are saying that because you didn't spend 8 hours on that day within the week, you are unemployed. These are issues that have been on ground. That is one. The second one is that because of your age, you are 68 years and you are working. Maybe after retirement, you still have what you engage in. You have a company, you have other consultancy that you are doing. Because we peg the age at 15 to 64, we say you are not working. Because we are not going to capture you. You are outside the labor force. You are not going to ask you questions.
I understand.
That's the second one.
Yeah,
then the COVID is the third one.
Yes, just a minute.
Okay.
I understand. You've explained all that.
Okay.
Yes, you've explained all that. But I'm just wondering, did we suddenly realize that had been, the parameter for computing our data?
To review methodology is not a static something. That if you are using this methodology, you must not change it. That's not how statistics work. As things are changing, as you are observing it, the world is changing, your methodology must change to come to reality of that changing world. If IT is driving so many things now, the technology that we are using must change to this new IT. So methodology is not static. It's not like you must stay.
So this is a new method.
This is a new methodology
by ILO.
And as a National Statistical Office, our mandate is to review our methodology from time to time to reflect what is happening within the economy. For instance, if you talk about gross domestic product, GDP, that we use to measure the performance of the economy, every 5 years, we are expected to review the base of the economy generally to look at what is happening. There are new sector that may be coming up. Before, we don't use to capture entertainment industry, but because they emerge and they are huge, especially in terms of income, so we have to reflect it in our economy. We have to rebase. So it's a continuous process. It's not something that is static. That why did you change it? we change according to what is happening within
Globally.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Statistician General, for the explanation. We felt that you needed to lay the foundation in terms of why this happened and where we're going henceforth. Before I bring in the lead economist at the World Bank office in Nigeria, let me throw this in. It's my pet idea. I hope that at some point the NBS will also begin to look more closely at the informal sector. Well, this is free consultancy on air. I just circumscribe it, what I refer to as Nigeria's breakfast economy. As we are sitting in the studios now, in major cities across the country, there are akara fryers and akara sellers. Huge patronage that they get from these daily paid laborers and so on and so forth. Others are preparing indomie or noodles, all kinds of things. These are informal persons. It takes them hours to get their preparations, and of course they do only a few hours, and after that they disappear. What is the worth of our breakfast economy in major Nigerian cities? Keep that in mind. You can KIV, I don't want you to respond to that. But it's my pet idea, because everywhere you go to, everywhere you go to, you see them. I mean, when we were growing up, you always knew the akara seller who was by the corner, and so on and so forth. But now let's bring in Uts Pape. Uts Pape, of course, we've heard the Statistician General give us the rationale for the new survey, and therefore the report that has emerged. So what he hasn't touched on, I would like you to explain that. 1 to 19 hours previously assumed to be unemployed, and 20 to 39 hours underemployed, 40 hours employed. So what is the new parameter, and therefore presumably, I would imagine, international best practice?
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, it's exactly as like the Citizen General points out. Now, like the definitions are very sort of like complex and cumbersome. No, because it's easy in a conversation just to say, oh, like how many people are employed. But as soon as you delve deeper and like ask what does it actually mean, you're gonna have to like think about like, are we gonna classify someone who worked 1 hour in last week? Are we gonna call him employed or not employed? And these are exactly sort of like the questions that one needs to grapple with. No, and this is exactly why the ILO is like a really important institution with its like regular conferences, and they always like think back the definitions that they have put in place, are they still relevant for the today's world? And so from time to time they revise these definitions. And exactly as the Citizen General mentioned, you don't want to jump on each new definition the next day, because whenever you do a change of definition, well, you're basically going to compromise on comparability. No, you can't really compare the previous estimate with a new one, well, because they are based on different definitions. And so therefore, we do agree that one needs to do this very carefully. And it's not just, if you look at the new labor force survey in Nigeria, it's not just about applying a new definition. There have been like a number of different other changes that brought the survey much more in line with international best practices. If you think about the organization of field work, if you think about quality measures and so on. And so making these changes is good, but you don't want to do them every year, because then you cannot compare anything. And so doing them at once is a very smart idea. And so you want to wait a little bit, then you do them at once, and then you can still get sort of comparable time series. So what are the new definitions? The new definition from the ILO is, if you look at employed, you look at the working age population, which is 15 plus, from 15 to like 65 plus. And then you look at who worked for at least 1 hour in the last 7 days. And as the Citizen General pointed out, you do consider people who actually have work but are temporarily absent, for example, because of sickness. And so there are a lot of like intricacies in this definition. From my point of view, what I'd really like to emphasize is one should not focus just on this one number of, for example, unemployment. This is a number that is often cited everywhere in the world, in the media. It's sort of like the go-to indicator. Mm-hmm. But what does it really tell us? I think it doesn't tell us as much, because we know, especially in countries like Nigeria, you sometimes have a very high poverty rate, but the unemployment rate is actually pretty low, because people who are like really don't have any livelihoods, they have to find some kind of work out of necessity. And so they might just work for 1 hour, for 2 hours, just get to like the essentials. And so yes, we're going to count them as employed. So the unemployment rate is really low, but it's not really going to help with a high poverty rate. And so therefore, our sort of like main thinking around this is don't focus too much on just the unemployment rate. Think about the quality of work, the type of jobs that people have, how much they earn, the job security they have. And I mean, we can say a little bit more about this, discuss this a little bit more in detail, but the new ILO definition, it's not just a new definition, it's a whole framework of work and what it means to work, different kinds of work, and it allows you to basically say much more about the quality of work. And this actually really tells you something about how is the economy doing, how are the livelihoods of people performing over time. And I think that's exactly what's the most important part.
Precisely, Uz, and thank you, because I was going to ask a question in that similar line, but permit my ignorance. I'm just wondering how all of these terminologies and breakdowns and parameters, how does it impact on the life of the average Nigerian who at this moment is going through a lot of economic crisis? I mean, what is the nexus between these new parameters that you have come up and the quality of life that Nigerians, are living at the moment?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So the definition, I think, in the new ILO standards is important because it allows you to have like a more fine-grained breakdown and understand better what's happening on the ground. Now, of course, that's just sort of the foundation. What you need in addition is regular, timely and frequent estimates. I mean, if you know what was the labor situation 2 years ago, I mean, it's not going to help you for today. No? We know how much Nigeria changed, for example, in the last 2 years. So it is really important that you have frequent estimates. And that's why it's so great that now the National Bureau of Statistics is giving quarterly estimates of labor. And we hope that this also will be sustained in the future. And so from our perspective, that's exactly something that's essential for the government. If the government wants to find policies that are based on evidence, we need to have frequent, timely and high quality estimates. And so what does it mean for the Nigerians, for their livelihoods? I mean, this is exactly the nexus between data and evidence to policy to the impact on lives. And if you don't have this link of data and evidence to policy, well, you can have very smart government officials, but if they don't have the evidence, they will not know like what to decide, which policies to enact. And that, of course, then is not helping the livelihoods of the Nigerians. And so from our perspective, the new labor force survey is really providing this link from the evidence to the policy. And then the policymakers, they will be informed by the data. And that goes much beyond the unemployment rate. That's exactly, like thinking about transitions, thinking about trajectories, thinking about the different types of work, thinking about youth employment versus non-youth employment, thinking about women in the labor force and so on. So like all these questions. And this gives the decision makers in the government like really the evidence to decide what kind of policies are the most important policies now for Nigeria to improve the livelihoods of the people.
Ulz, thank you very much there for your explanation. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. We've kept Wale Smart Oyerinde, the DG of NECA, from Lagos via Zoom. We've kept him just to listen to the explanations provided by the Statistician General and the World Bank lead economists. Of course, Nia Akinseju is still here with us in the studios. Wale Smart, what does all of this mean to you as an employers association? Is it likely to provide fresh insights? Is it likely to provide additional information that could enable employers respond appropriately?
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us. And first, let me congratulate Brother Prince for the good work they are doing at the MBS. For us, as it is, the Statistician General and the team have done their bit within the context of their statutory role and responsibility, and then they've also tried to align with international best practice, as it says. Fundamentally, the main concern for us is this: data is like law. If you are not careful, as they said, the law is an ass, that you can turn it anyhow you want to. Data also can be weaponized depending on your your intention. You know, the new release after the rebasing, I'll call it rebasing of the parameter for measuring, which is rightly so since it's best practice and as in alignment with the relationship and the standard by the ILO, which is okay. But the fundamental issue for us is the data as it was as was presented yesterday. We should avoid a situation where it is being weaponized, because somebody can look at that data and actually think, yeah, things are improving, and actually think, yes, employment is being generated, and actually think, yes, a lot of people are being employed. And it can give a misleading perception that organized business is actually doing well, because for somebody to work, that means there must be a business, which is not currently so. So the most important thing for us, since the data was released yesterday, and from our conversation, is what are the things that the data, what are the things they are not saying? As was mentioned by Pope, you know, the data is not showing the exact standard of living of Nigerians. It's not showing, reflecting the cost of living of Nigerians, which is not the business of the NBS. So for us, is for government to go back with stakeholders and let us look at what are those things that data is basically not showing. It has given us a general overview of this, how many people that are working for less than 19 hours. But for those people, what are the quality of the work that they are doing within the context of that hour? What is the value of that work that they are doing? Is that work, is the income generated from those employment, is it sustainable enough? Is it enough to make them to survive the harsh economic situations that they're currently facing? Those, the data will not give us. The NBS has done its part, giving us that guide that this is the reality now in relation to the best practices. But the main work is now for us, government, for employers, for us to interpret the data appropriately without bringing in politics, without bringing in other perceptions. If you don't analyze it holistically within the context of our reality, because sometimes we say best practices, which is okay, but we have also canvassed best fit. Because best practices sometimes might be distant, might not be in alignment with your current reality. So we have to bring the data back to our local, to our subnationals, and look at what exactly is this data not showing us, so that we can deal with those critical issues of standard of living, of cost of living, and ease of doing business.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Yerunde, for speaking with us. Let's still come back here to the studio. Mr. Niyi Akinshiju is a financial analyst, and also I want to align my thoughts with Mr. Yerunde's thoughts. And at first, I thought that the new figures really, do not align or corroborate, the reality. They do not reflect the reality. If before now we were having unemployment rate at over 30%, and now we're saying in the first quarter of this year we are having 4.1%. I mean, you begin to look at it because of the new methodology. Now, assuming, Mr. Akinshiju, that in a school or in the university, for instance, where you have continuous class assessment and the overall mark is 40% and a student scores, let's say, 15%. Now, obviously, that's a failure. That's a failure. And now the authorities decide to, okay, let us look at this method again, and say, okay, let's not use the continuous class assessment. Let's take class attendance, And class attendance, this particular student, yes, attends 30, times out of 40. That's definitely a pass. So you see, it's 33% to 5%. I don't understand it. You are saying that does not mean that unemployment is low. It's paradoxical, and I don't get it.
Well, it depends on what
I
perspective.
Your question is straightforward. I'm sure Nihi will.
Yes,
I
very
get your point. Yes.
yes. And of course, very excellent. Because the scenario you were trying to paint, actually, it's a corner room scenario for me. But the truth of the matter is, I know that for fact, you cannot have a body of data that will attend to all possible classifications in the economy, especially. So if the labor force survey is telling us, is giving us data around classification and employment of labor across cadres, as it were. What is important is to also now try and triangulate, with other data in the public space, also produced by labor, by NBS. So you have the GDP figures, you have the inflation figures, you have the what do you call multidimensional figure, the most popular, because that seems to represent the reality. But the truth of the matter is there is still a deficit in understanding the whole gamut of the multidimensional thing. And the essence of data, as far as I'm concerned, is not data for itself, but data for application. So now, the truth is that, just like when I first read this report, my mind went to Oga Kingsley here, because he had always been talking about the breakfast economy. And in truth, that is one aspect of our economic life that we need to put value to. And what that tells us too, the breakfast economy is rooted in the informal economy. And I know, I am not too sure the office of the Statistician General had attended formally to tell us the value, and the strength of the informal economy.
I think it's captured.
But from...
Yes.
No, this one captures it now.
Yes, this one captured it.
So I am trying to now also triangulate. The size of the informal economy in Nigeria, before now, had been given at about 80% of the total growth of the Nigerian economy. So it does mean that the labor force, in that 80% would be huge. And it also means that if whatever methodology we have been using before now had not captured that informal aspect of our economy. And it's important for data to be able to reflect all the cadres and perspectives, within that ecosystem. And I think this is what this new methodology is talking to. And of course, the Statistician General made mention of the fact that it's not as if the NBS is saying unemployment rate had reduced from 33% to 4.1%. Different realities and, of course, different indicators were measured. Now, what is being measured now is that people that were not actively captured before are now being captured. What do we not now do when we link up, to the size of agriculture in the economy at the level of GDP, placed at 26%? There must be laborers, there must be people working to produce that 26% of the national economy. Trade and services, about 51%. There must be people working to produce that 51% of the economy. But when we now come to how we have been using it before, how we have been measuring it before, we now say these people that have produced so much in our economy are not captured. So for me, this is a way to see those active economic agents. Because in truth, what we have been saying is that those actors or those that have been active in that economy, the informal economy, are not active economic agents. So this has established it. Now, it does not also now equate prosperity. It does not equate the fact that your earning satisfy your immediate needs. What will government now do? That's the issue. You now have these possibilities on ground. How would government now enhance, the possibilities for increased prosperity for those who are in the informal economy? So, and of course, it also talks to the corporate social responsibilities, for instance, of people in the corporate sector. And the underlying definition for me is those who are working for pay or profits. I think that captures it.
You know, sorry again. What maybe I need you again to clarify for me, because as we're doing this, you know, the viewer is also getting an understanding. If the aggregate of what, you know, has been added now, you know, to the parameters, as part of the parameters, and the reduction of the hour parameter has resulted in the 4.1%, shouldn't there be a reflection of this, you know, on the earlier data of 33.3% unemployment?
Because the earlier data emphasized wage. And I see one of the disaggregated
wage.
Yes, wages. So it's more or less labor for pay. It's different from labor for profits. In fact, part of the disaggregated indicators here also talk of labor in households. So you have an housemaid. He or she is engaged in a form of labor or not, of one form of labor or not. And of course, I know that is traditional and cultural to the Nigerian households. You know, so you have your housemaid, you employ her, you send her to school sometimes. If you are not sending her to school, you are paying the parents a form of stipend. That is reward for labor applied. So it will not be fair again to alienate this set of labor, you know, in the whole consideration, as it were.
It's like studying philosophy.
Well, yes, in a sense. You know, thanks a lot for the explanation you have provided. There are a number of issues on the table, and I think that it's advisable to give the Assistant General the opportunity to respond to the many perspectives. Wale Oyerinde raised a number of issues. Niyi Akinseju has also elaborated on those issues and provided also new perspectives to say, let's take a look at this. So let's get you to respond, and then we'll have more questions.
Thank you very much. Let me take the issue of the labor force, the unemployment, and then the issue of living standard, welfare of the workers, and the issue of poverty. Each survey has their own objective. The objective of labor force survey is to capture engagement in activity by citizens. It's not to measure poverty or welfare of the citizens. So when we talk about food security, there is a survey that measures food security for the country. When we talk about poverty, there is a survey that measures welfare of the people, living standard survey, multidimensional poverty survey. They are looking at issue of poverty. But essentially, what labor force survey is doing is to look at proportion of people, working age population, that are working or that are not working at a particular point in time. That is what that one is doing. And the issue of linking the labor force with GDP, that is exactly what we are doing now. Before, we are not having proportion allocation of people that are producing the goods and services in the country, because we are alienating some part of people that are producing. And in GDP, any product, good or services that is produced must be captured to reflect the totality of what is happening in the economy. People are saying, why are you putting, why did you open up the age limit from 15 to 64 before? Now it's just 15 and above. Why did you leave it open? And they are saying that, okay, this 65 years old, this 68 years old, 70 years old, what is the contribution that they are making to the economy that make you to open it up? Now, Dr. Niyi just said it now, that some of them, the contribution they are making to the economy are huge. They are not many in terms of proportion, but their contribution must be captured if we want to reflect those that are contributing to our GDP. We must not leave them out. The housemaid, apprentices, what they are doing must also be captured. And that is what this survey is doing now, to see that as far as you are engaged in any work activity, you have to be captured. Again, what people are looking for, that is very common, is that if I'm not working in a place where I will be paid salary, wage earners, salary earners, then I'm not employed. It's different. As far as you are doing something, you are engaged in an activity, we are going to capture you as being employed, even if it is for 1 hour within the week. But when people say, when we mention 1 hour, they say, so if I work 1 hour in a week, are you telling me that it's good enough for me to survive, to have a good living? We have analyzed the data. When we say at least 1 hour, it doesn't mean when you work 1 hour, you must stop within a week. People are giving an example of somebody washing a car. So if you wash a car for somebody in a day for 30 minutes or 20 minutes, is that what you are going to be living on? And we are saying no. What the definition is saying is that if you wash a car for 30 minutes, are you now going from Monday to Friday to go and sleep in your house and not wash another car? If you have cars to wash for people in a day, 4 people, you do that. You cannot do for 1 day now and go back and say 1 hour. The 1 hour we are talking about is that we are going to capture it because you have done something, just to reflect that anything that you produce, whatever the number of time that it takes, must be captured in the economy. So also the people that are doing it, no matter how short it's been done, we should be able to capture it. But that does not mean you must work 1 hour in a week, even if you have opportunity to do more work. You now say it's 1 hour. That's not what you are saying. But we are saying that we want to capture it and reflect it that, look, there are so many people that want to work, and that's why we said don't limit it to unemployment alone. When we are talking about labor force survey, when we are talking about labor market statistics, don't limit it to unemployment. Look at underemployment. There are people that are working even for 18 hours, for 20 hours, but they want to do more. But there is no opportunity for them to be able to do that. Why are we not talking about them? We are not talking about just 1 hour. How many people, we have done the analysis, people that work between 1 to 5 hours, they are less than 1%, 0.7%. They are so negligible. It means Nigeria are very, very hardworking because more than 65% of Nigerians are working over 40 hours in a week. So it's not like we are classifying people to say they are not working up to 40 hours, they are not working up to 20 hours. We are putting them in a straitjacket of 1 hour. No. But we should be able to capture them as well and classify it properly so that government can see the picture holistically and address that. Why is it that people that want to work more hours are not able to work? What is causing that? Then they can address it. Then, talking about the issue of quality, the quality that we introduce into the data, first we increase the sample size from 33,300 households before to 35,520 households now. You know, the larger the sample size, the better the estimate. So we have done that to improve the quality of the data. Before, as I said, we always do one-off, maybe for 15 days in a quarter to collect the data. And when you have set a time like that, it means the animator must complete their work within that period. Even if the person they want to interview is not around, they have to just find a way to collect that data. But now, we have given them enough time within 1 week to work in just a small enumeration area, so that even if somebody is not around, they have ample opportunity to go back and interview the right person for this survey.
What is the context of the interview? What kind of questions, contained in the questionnaire?
Okay, so first we take your demographic information, and then we look for members of the household that are 15 years and above, and then we ask them in the last 7 days. This is the one that is basically for the labor force. In the last 7 days, have you engaged in any activity for at least 1 hour in the last 1 week? When you ask that and they answer, yes, I've done something, yes, I've not done anything, So if you have not done anything, are you looking for what to do? Because this is where the concept of out of labor force coming. If you are not looking for work, and we ask you, if you get a work, if you say you are looking for work, okay, if you get the work, are you ready to do it? If you say yes, are you available to take it? If you say yes, then that means you are ready to work, but you have not gotten. But if we ask you, you are not doing anything, are you searching? Have you been searching for work? Say no. If you see work, are you going to do? You say no. He's not ready to work. He's not part of the people that we want to consider as unemployed people. Those ones are out of labor. We ask that question as well. Then those that are working, we ask you, in which area of the sector are you working? Then we also ask, how many hours do you put in a week? And we ask them, how much do you get from it? So the issue of cost of living, whether the pay is good enough, we have those data that we can give to government to look at. So, but it's not MBS to say the payment is low, please increase it. Our own is to provide the data, then the government, the policy makers can now come up, take the data and use it for the betterment of Nigeria.
Another question I would like to ask, just on this quality, because it's quite important. It's, I want to believe that your population size is quite large. It's Nigeria, the whole population.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering how, you determined the number of the households now.
To visit.
Yes.
That's our own work. And that's what differentiates us from National Population Commission. National Population Commission deal with census, counting everybody, counting all elements within the population. But for us at the National Bureau of Statistics, we deal with sample. We take sample of a particular population in a systematic way, in a scientific way that we have been taught. So such that that sample that you have taken must represent at the end of the day the entire population, which means you must ensure that all characteristics of that population are factored into the sample that you are taking. You have male, you have female in the population, you must factor in that one. You have young people, you must factor in. You have old people, you must factor him in. So we have all the parameters that are needed to calculate our samples, which you have done, which I also said is going to be part of the report for anybody to look at it. Okay. And let me say that the other thing that people usually say is this, that, we are over 200 million Nigerians. So why are you taking a sample of 35,000 households? So that is the system. That's why the techniques, and that's the expert that is there. If you want to test whether salt is good in a soup, and you put the salt and you stir it, for you to know whether it's sweet or not, are you going to drink all the soup at the same time? You just stir it, but what you need to do is to ensure that you stir it very well, so that salt cover all the part of the soup. That is the one I'm saying. You must consider all the characteristics of that population. That's the stirring.
Okay.
So that when you pick small spoon and you put it in your mouth, it represents what is in that soup.
What's your favorite soup?
Well, you know.
Let him tell us. What is your favorite? Is it Begri?
No.
It's a weird.
It's a weird. But sometimes, sometimes the salt that you put in the soup does not circulate. Sometimes there's a portion that, stays away from part of the soup. I'm telling you as a woman.
Yes.
So
it will hang somewhere.
It will hang somewhere.
That's the margin of error.
I like that.
That's the margin of error.
But I hope you don't complain when your Ewedu also has a margin of error. At the time you are taking it. All right. So you're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue the conversation with our guests. All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's bring in again Uts Pape, the lead economist of the World Bank office here in Nigeria. Tell our viewers something. On the face of it, it seems ridiculous to say that somebody who works for 1 hour in a week has some form of work. Whereas previously, the definition of employment began with 40 hours. That is to say, 8 hours, 5 days in a week. Now, the new parameter says you do 1 hour of work in a week and then you are deemed to be employed. Is it that the new methodology is seeking to run away from unemployment figures, jump into employment, but skip underemployment? If a person is a graduate and does car wash activity for 1 hour in a week, I mean, let's be realistic. There are also legal implications. I don't want to get in that, but how realistic is this? 1 hour? If it were a much higher fraction of the former 40 hours a week, I'm sure some persons would more readily appreciate this. There's no culture, I imagine, that venerates laziness. So I do 1 hour in a week and then the remaining 39 hours I'm lying on my couch. How do you explain this to somebody who is apprehending the data in this instance?
No, that's an excellent point. No, I mean, and I think it also comes a little bit back to the question. Well, data is not there just for itself. No, data has a purpose, and the purpose is to inform policies. But of course, it should also help the population to understand what's actually happening in the economy. Now, the problem is with the 1 hour. What is a better definition? Someone would say 5 hours, but then someone could argue 5 hours is also not enough. It should be 6 hours, maybe it should be 4 hours, maybe it should be 10 hours. So from my perspective, there's just no good answer to this question. And so therefore, and that's exactly my initial point, you do not want to look at just the unemployment indicator and make a big story out of this. Instead, you want to delve into the data and look and separate it. And then what the Citizen General did, looking, for example, how many people actually do work between 0 and 5 hours, how many people do work between 5 to 10 hours. And then you get a much more disaggregated picture of what's actually happening in the economy. And so I think that is really important. It also basically speaks to the purpose of, statistical literacy, which I think is really important. And it was one of the first points that we've heard about weaponizing data. I think to avoid weaponizing data, there is sort of a need for everyone to understand, to some extent, statistics. Not in a very complex way of what is a sampling weight, but in a very basic way of how can I read data, how can I interpret data, to make sure that you cannot be deceived and guided in the wrong way. And then I also think, and this comes back to your question, is really the question that you ask. If you ask, is work sufficient in Nigeria to basically get out of poverty? Well, look at the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate is between 4 and 5%. The poverty rate is substantially higher. So obviously the answer is no, it's not. If your question is, did the labor market improve over time? I wouldn't look at the unemployment rate. I would look at the quality of work. No? As I mentioned before, I would look, for example, what's the fraction of wage employment? Because wage employment, as we had emphasized a little bit before, is exactly the kind of employment that is much more secure, gives you much better earnings, and so on. It's not often in the formal sector. And if you are interested in knowing whether Nigeria's economy is providing better opportunities for its people, well, you want to look at wage employment, for example, and then you can make the story out of wage employment. And so therefore, I think it really depends on the question, and we should move away from over-interpreting this one indicator.
Okay, let's look at, I hope we can do without looking at those indicators. And fortunately, the World Bank and the ILO were partners in collating this new data. So I believe it meets international standard from your perspective. So if you look at Q4 2022, the unemployed data was 5.3%. In Q1 2023, it came down to 4.1%. What does that mean? What does that amount to?
That's an excellent question, but it's a very difficult question. So usually what we do is, if you look at labor numbers, we interpret them going back 1 year because of seasonality. No, you do have different cycles in the economy, harvest cycles, and so on. And so therefore interpreting quarter to quarter, I mean, it tells you something, but it doesn't really tell you a lot of like economic background. Like it doesn't give you the economic story of it. This is why I emphasized at the beginning, it's so important to continue the survey over time. Just doing it for 1 year, 4 quarters, and then stopping it is not going to create as much value as if you run the survey for, let's say, 5 years, 10 years, continuously. Because then you can always go back and compare, for example, in 2025, you can compare the first quarter to the first quarter in 2023. And this is going to tell you something about how the labor market developed over time. So I would not overinterpret too much going from one quarter to the next quarter because of seasonality.
Nee, I want to bring you in here. And let's examine the policy implication of these numbers and therefore the utility for a policy maker. If we have no sense of the quality of work and the appropriateness of work, and it is just a number, say I work 1 hour a week and that's it. So I'm deemed to be employed. How does that impact the possibility of me canalizing programs to ensure that more persons are captured? Yes, as I asked Uds, you can then run away from unemployment, but there's then a bulge in underemployment, and that underemployment appears not to be defined in this particular instance, because we have clearly instances of mismatch in our economy. I mean, you have persons who are very well educated, and you see the kind of jobs they are getting themselves in. The guy wakes up in the morning, probably does, let's say, 6 hours in a day, but give him an opportunity, he would. I'm sure we all remember, and Uds wasn't around there, but one of our national embarrassment, just to say by way of example, some years ago, there was a call for an interview by the Immigration Service at the National Stadium, now Emiko Abiola Stadium, in Abuja. And you saw the stampede that occurred. A number of persons who came for that interview already had some form of employment. But they said, look, this was an opportunity, but if they were to be captured under today's data, you won't bother about them as being unemployed.
I think the data as provided is obvious. We have a trouble, on hand. 93% of employment in the informal sector is a major challenge. And that brings the reality to whoever is the government, whoever is in charge of government planning for economic development. So how do we formalize this huge number? That should be the first question, Yes, but it also tells us that there's a starting point. 93% of the Nigerian workforce are economic agents. That's a starting point. Where are they employed? How can we advance, the level of employment to merge with earnings that will satisfy needs? So there are now different indicators that need to be brought together and then form a policy, either by sector or by demographics and all that, For instance, if I am the governor of a state now, I want to go and look at the percentage of my workforce that falls between age 15 and age 19 or age 18, for instance, to understand the kind of engagement, because naturally a 15-year-old, 16-year-old should not be working. It should the expectation is that between 15 and 16, 17, you are honing your whatever profession, whatever educational engagement you are going through. So if you are employed at that level and is in the informal sector, it means you are effectively out of the employment cadre, So those are the data that should start telling or advising, policymakers on what exactly to apply and to what. This data, for instance, is advising me that this 8,000 naira intervention, to poor, vulnerable household, might be a good intervention. For instance, however we look at it, if we have the breakfast economists, the breakfast economic agents, most of their capital investment is not up to 5,000. In fact, for 5,000, it means they are flourishing. Some, the tabletop traders, for instance, the totality of the wares on their tabletop might not be up to 2,000. So if we have a properly channeled fund, to capitalize this set of people, would it enhance their earnings? Will it enhance their profit in a way that they become sustainable? So the argument around this conditional cash intervention can also be settled by this data. So for me, it's important that policymakers don't just look at this figure at this data as
casually.
As a political abstract, as a political figures and justifications. They are not doing well.
Just to claim, international
it's not as if the economy is doing well.
But as you said, so that it isn't that, well, it's in sync with international best practices.
Exactly.
Because Wallace Matoyorinde wants that we should rather be looking at best fit.
In fact,
rather than best practices.
Yes, exactly. I want to bring in Wale Oyerinde to our conversation so that we are fast spending our time. And Mr. Oyerinde, we know that all over the world, the variables that drive what people do, how they do it, where they do it, when they do it, differ. So I'm wondering, is benchmarking data behavior against the world of international best standard, is it the way to go when we know that the variables that drive this data behavior all over the world are different? And secondly, what does NECA intend to do with the data that has been provided?
Thank you very much. I think first, benchmarking is appropriate. We are not an island of our own. We are not a world. We are not isolated within the context of the global community. And since the world is a global village now, we cannot pick something, we cannot do something out of nothing. So benchmarking is quite appropriate. We support benchmarking. Most of the ILO convention that we subscribe to, there are also standards, standards that creates most like the minimum standard. It benchmarks practices all over the world. And so, look, beyond this level, no country should naturally go below. So benchmarking helps you to know how you are doing, to know to project into where you should be as a whole. So benchmarking quite appreciable. The NBS, once again, I said, yes, they've done a beautiful job. And it goes beyond the NBS for us now. It is now, and Mr. Leandro mentioned it, it is what do we do with the data? Parameters are standardized parameters. Globally, wherever you go, 2 plus 2 will be 4. Now, your 4, or how you arrive at your 4, whether it's 2 plus 2 or 2 times 2 or 4 minus 2, will always give you, if 2 is your answer, it will always give you 2. The fact now is for you to now go back and deal with the issues that the data is not mentioning, which is not, to a large extent, the responsibility of the NBS. They've given us the data, this is the parameters, this is the reality within the context of the data. And what we are going to do now is to engage the relevant agencies of government in the executive level and legislatures. The Ministry of Labour, this data has come out, this is the reality for us. As Mr. Ojo also mentioned, how do we now create more opportunities, or how do we mitigate the threats that this data has shown us? How do we deal with the fundamental issues that this data is pointing to? I mentioned earlier that the key work that we are going to do also within the context of our institution is to make sure that this data, they are not weaponized. Somebody, a mischievous person can look at that figure and say, look, that we don't have problem with unemployment again, since this number is now the number from, it's easy to juxtapose. Before it was 33%. Now it is less than 5%, without looking at the parameters surrounding the current reality. So we are going to step up our advocacy that it is less of the figure now. We have the figure from the NBS. Now, each ministry, Ministry of Labour, Ministry of Trade, Investment, and Ministry of Trade and Investment, Ministry of Poverty Alleviation, Ministry of all the ministries that are involved, all the agencies that are involved. And what do we now do with this data so that we maximize the opportunities that it has given us? Data, we need it. I think one of the challenges we've had over time is the paucity of data. And once again, we commend the NBS for taking the bold step of coming up with this. It gives us something to work with. It gives us something to advocate with.
All right. Oyerinde, thank you very much there for that perspective. Very quickly, I want to come back to NIE. And this is a follow-up to the policy implication of the data that we now have, and also back up a bit the parameters for arriving at the data. We've talked about opportunities. That's fine. But what about reward? Because also on the national table at the moment is a conversation around the new minimum wage. Our new minimum wage is computed on a flat rate basis, 30,000 naira per month. Previously, 30,000 naira per month was calculated on a 40-hour working week, which is what, of course, the Labour Act also says. In other jurisdictions, particularly in the more advanced economies, the minimum wage is calculated on an hourly basis. So how do we then square this with a best fit? Because sometimes, of course, it's difficult in some of the occupations to calculate how much work you actually put in on an hourly basis. I don't know whether you get the question I'm asking. So that we're talking about minimum wage, that's a flat rate on the monthly basis. Some people are saying whatever numbers they are banding right now. And yet, you say you work 1 hour a week and then you are employed. Again, to some persons, it's probably ridiculous.
It looks astounding, actually. But again, if we need to also go back to the new figures, as it were. The new figure tells us that the percentage of wage earners in the total figure of employed is in Q1 23. It's less than 12%. So that also, the indicator is clear that emphasis cannot just be on that segment of the economy alone, and that there is even a bigger need now to start attending to the larger spectrum of the economy, which is what is now being captured, the informal sector, as it were. It means also that whatever you do to that wage earning segment will not necessarily trickle down, to the larger percentage of that. So it's the data is telling us giving us a lot of messages. How do we now, exploit, as it were, these messages? Two, it's also telling us that we have been giving lip service, to energizing the Nigerian economy, because we have always looked at the formal sector without creating a linkage between the informal and the formal. And there are obvious linkages. Raw materials are produced in farmlands. How do we connect effectively, between the farm gates and the manufacturer's gates? Those are issues we need, to consider.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me quickly just appreciate Mr. Wale Oyerinde, who is the Director General, Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA. Mr. Oyerinde, thank you very much for joining us for this conversation. And then we wish you luck in the steps that you intend to take, of course, to ensure that the new data is not weaponized. Have a pleasant day, Mr. Oyerinde.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, let me ask just in 60 seconds, if you may, again on the issue of weaponization of this report. It's a likely behavior among policy decision makers. What are you likely to do about it?
All right. Thank you very much. I want to start by saying that one, the present government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a government that is ready to use data. But they are ready to use data not wrongly. Yesterday, the Honorable Minister of Budget and Economic Planning was the one that launched this report. And if you heard what what he said there yesterday, that look, we are aware that the 33% that we have before has nothing to do with this 4.1% that we have now, because the methodology are different, the indicators are computed differently. He said it there, that it is obvious that we cannot be comparing, and we cannot be saying unemployment drop. It didn't drop from anywhere, because they are not coming from the same place. So this is the new figure. This is what we have gotten from the new methodology that we are using, 4.1, 5.3 before. So he understands, and that's why I praise the president, that he has put somebody that understands the issue of data at the ends of affair of our planning, because to plan you need data, and the present minister understand that. He exhibited it yesterday, and they are ready to support MBS to produce more of this data on regular basis. So the issue of, from government side, especially with the minister, I don't have problem of weaponizing the data. But I want to say that the media should help us emphasize on this, that it's not dropping from 33 to 4.1, because that's what we have been hearing. No, and we emphasized it yesterday, that don't bring 33 into the picture now. Look at the broader information, indicators that are available, that my brother Ni have been talking about.
Certainly, Prince Adeyemi Adeniran, the media, especially the NTA, we work in partnership with you, the NBS, to ensure that this data is not weaponized. And we'd really like to appreciate you for coming to share your perspectives and explain this new report for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Prince Adeyemi Adeniran, Statistician General of the Federation and Chief Executive Officer of the National Bureau of Statistics. And we also have here with us Uz Pape, who's the lead economist, World Bank. We'd like to appreciate you for coming to explain some of these things. They can be too technical sometimes. Thank you. And Ni Kinshiju, Financial and Investment, and it's always a pleasure, to have you to explain all of these financial stuffs. Kingsley was talking about 2 plus 2 may not always be 4, depending on the method you apply. Thank you very much.
If you use base 2.
If you use base 2.
If you use duodecimal. But 2 plus 2 equals to 4 on the decimal scale. Statistician General, is that correct?
Yes.
Either?
It becomes a different modern mathematics.
Do we take sport?
Should we still talk about mathematics?
No, that's fine. No, don't go there. Don't go there. I've told you that I managed and I tried to make a P7, and I say it and I'm proud of it, but it is not now in those days. If you made a P7 in those days, yes, and it is my effort. If you made a P7 in the days I finished my secondary school, you will something. Yes, it will be a C now.
Yeah.
All right. So do we take sports? All right, let's quickly take sports. Unfortunately, our own Tosin Amusan did not win in the 100 meters hurdle yesterday, but she did put in her best. But let's get all the details from our sports desk.
All right, so that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria for today and indeed for the week. We thank you for being with us. We're back on Monday, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Enjoy your weekend. We'll look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
Just to appreciate Kingsley, one of our newest viewers, Fatima Evelyn Isagba, she told me she stumbled onto Good Morning Nigeria and she liked it, and this is our breakfast program every day. So thank you, Fatima Evelyn Isagba, for being our fan. And so we wish you a pleasant weekend. Don't forget to be our partner in the fight against rape and rapists. From all of us here, have a pleasant weekend. Bye-bye.